is the big news today that Manchester United have banned 4 members of the media from their press conferences today for stories suggesting that the manager has fallen out with half the dressing room. So Sky Sports, ESPN, Samuel Luckhurst, and somebody else have all been banned from the press conference, and some might get a longer-term ban. What's your thoughts on Man United shutting down the press like that?
Just goes to show, doesn't it, that if you can control the mainstream media, you can control the narrative. And unfortunately for Man United, 4 of them have gone against the grain, which has obviously upset them. And if you actually look at the Man United statement, right, I read this out earlier on the show. I did. This is funny. Yeah. And this just sums it all up right there. Let me get this real quick. There we go. I've got it. Right. So Man United claimed that they had not been given a right to reply to the negative stories around the club. Right. It then goes on to say journalists from ESPN, Sky, Manchester Evening News and the Mirror have been excluded after reporting some players were unhappy with the Dutchman Ten Hag. They then issued a statement, United, that says, we are taking action against a number of news organisations for not for publishing stories we don't like, but for doing so without contacting us first to give us the opportunity to comment, challenge or contextualise. We believe there is... this is an important principle to defend, and we hope it can lead to a reset in the way we work together. Why would football clubs want journalists to work with them?
Well, I think
they're trying to control the narrative. So if they're trying to control the narrative and they're upset that they're doing their job. I've sit on here so many weeks there and say they're puppets. They're all puppets. They're all the same faces in the press conferences every week, feeding out to millions and millions of people around the world of said club, the narrative of the club. And then anybody who goes against the general consensus from that narrative is then shut down as toxic, negative, and a problem and a fake fan. The fact that them 4 have come out and just said, whatever, mate, we're putting these stories out. Yeah, it's now absolutely ruined Man United's stranglehold on the mainstream media for that club. And now that's why they've shut them down. And I've seen a lot of your fans sitting there saying, oh, well, Fergie did it. Yeah, Fergie had won about 15 or 20 trophies at that point. Yeah, Fergie could do what he wanted. Yeah, and not only that, yeah, like there's obviously some basis to it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have just said, right, they're banned.
So, yeah, look, I understand from that point of view. I know how you see the media in terms of how the clubs want to control the narrative. And of course, clubs want to control the narrative. I think we all do. In terms of, if you think about just yourself as a person, we all want to control the narratives about what people think about us and feel about us. When people accuse you of being a fake fan because you don't celebrate a goal, you come out and you come out and defend yourself as an example. The media, though, what I will say is this: the media do have a responsibility and duty. It's part of their. I'm going to get the wording wrong here because I don't understand it to a detailed level. But whenever you get a detrimental story about an individual or a person or an organization, it is typical practice to reach out to that person for comment. And the fact they haven't done it, whether or not Man United are trying to control the narrative or not, they were stupid to publish stories without reaching out for a response. So if a mainstream media outlet was about to run a proper full-on story against you today and they don't come to you to comment, there are legal precedents that then go in your favor because they haven't actually followed the process of the media. So I don't disagree with you that Man United want to control the narrative. At the same time, if Man United feel that the stories are not 100% true or they're a fabrication and you haven't reached out, if Man United would have refused to comment and then they run these stories, that's on Manchester United. So I do see it from both sides. I do look at it as my biggest issue here isn't even the stories, it's who the hell is leaking them. That's more of my concern when it comes to Man United. Because
who do you think is leaking them? I'm gonna if I had a bet on it, I'd say Sancho's definitely one of them.
Yeah, who is the leak? You know what's really interesting about it, right? I saw this, and this is the thing. I did a video about this earlier on today, and I see some people were like, he's falling out with the dressing room. I knew it was the manager. Sack him, get him out of here. He's ruining players. And I think it's a bit basic. It's a bit of a basic opinion. It's a little bit. That's like a ready salted bag of Walkers. It's like, meh, it'll fill a hole, but you know what? It's not really satisfy you, does it? And the reason I say that is this, bruv. Every single one of our managers since Fergie, the same stories have come out about them training this problem and losing dressing rooms and players leaking information. So there is part of me that thinks even if the manager has done wrong, I want to know who the players leaking it are, and I want them gone as well. It's almost you ever seen that? You ever watched Harry Potter?
No, I've watched bits of them. I just can't sit there watching that for 3 hours, Terry.
I get you, right? If you watch any of the films or read the books, there's scenes in it where Malfoy, who's one of the bad little kids, grasses up the main three characters for being out of their bedroom at night. And then he's smiling when they're in front of one of the main teachers who's disciplining them and taking points off. And then he also gets like points taken away as well. Because for him to know they were out of bed, he had to be out of bed. And then he grasped them up and didn't like it. And that's how I feel about this situation. There are elements here where the manager must be ridiculed. But the players that are G'ing him up, downing tools, going to the media, for me, they're every bit as guilty, whether I like them or not. And I don't care whether it's Sancho. I don't care whether it's Rashford. I don't care whether it's Maguire, Martial, or some academy player. Whoever they are, if they're leaking this, they should go onto I need to say a hit list. I don't want them hurt. They should go onto a list where the new CEO that's coming in says, I don't care how good you are. I don't care how important you are. I don't care if you're the poster boy. You're gone. That is how you fix these problems. But that's my biggest issue with this. The manager will be thrown under the bus. The manager will be sacked. And this isn't the reason why I think he should be sacked. We'll come to that later. For me, it's a case of the club is so broken that we're banning media outlets. These stories are coming out. It's the same stories every single time. Training's too hard. He's too authoritarian on us. I'm sick and tired of the whole football club, mate. I am. And the fact we're banning media outlets now, it's just we're a joke of a football club, mate. We're an absolute abomination. We really are.
You've only got yourselves to blame.
Well, not me.
Yourselves to blame.
Not me.
But as a fan base on the whole,
I agree.
You've only got yourselves to blame, because you can say about all the stories being leaked under previous managers and that. I've seen a lot, not all, but a lot of your fans online blaming the players. Oh, it's the players. It's the players. Well, who's picking them? Erik ten Hag's got a 25-man squad that he has to put into the Premier League and into UEFA for the Champions League. He chose to pick them players. Yeah, he's chose to bench 5 of his signings in the summer at the weekend against Newcastle. Only one of your signings in the summer started that game, and that was the goalkeeper. All the other 10 players were already there when he got there, or came through the academy. He's chose to do that. So people can go on and cry all they like about players down in tools and it's the players, it's this, it's that. Well, who decided to put them in the squad in the first place? Yeah, because he quite easily could have, like, if you look at Mikel Arteta and Edu, yeah, albeit I don't agree with everything they've done at this football club, the one thing I'll say is they're both on the same page.
Yep.
Right. And they wanted Aubameyang gone. He's gone. They ripped the contract up. Well, why didn't you rip up Scott McTominay's or Harry Maguire's? Yeah, why didn't you rip up somebody else's, Luke Shaw's, whatever? Yeah, instead, you're handing out new contracts to some of these players. Yeah, that's on the manager. He's chosen to do that. And if he hasn't chosen to do that, he's allowed the club to do that. And I said this to you months and months back. He knows the budget of that football club when he got there. He knows what they can spend. Right now, yes, it's not him necessarily choosing 90 million quid on Anthony. He chose Anthony. That's now down to the money men in the hierarchy to go and do the deal. They've overpaid. That's not on Ten Hag. He chose that player. Well, on the flip side of that, if he knows that the budget was, say, 200 million and you've done 150 of that on Mason Mount and Anthony, at what point does your manager sit there and say to the money men, yeah, well, the budget's only 200 this summer. Probably not the best idea to go and do 150 of that on them two. So what we do is we're going to sign Kudus for 35 and we're going to sign Maddison for 40. There's 75. You've still got another 75 to go and do on another one player or two players. Yeah. Instead, he has then allowed them, if it isn't his decision, he's then allowed them to go and spend that money. Right now, you fast forward 4 months later, Mason Mount's apparently injured. Yeah, good one. He ain't injured. That's just keeping him out of the limelight, mate. Yeah, no way is that guy injured.
You don't think he's got a calf strain?
No way is that guy injured. That guy's gone into Man United with number 7 on his back, with David Beckham's PR agency as his PR agency. Beckham's agency from when he was sent off with Simeone and turned his career around afterwards. Same agency. No wonder he got the number 7. right? Furthermore, there's no way he's injured because they can't ruin the reputation of Mason Mount, the young English player. Go and have a look how many endorsements and advertising campaigns Mason Mount's done, in the last 12 months. This guy's advertising for Mercedes, for Audi, GQ magazine. He's everywhere, right? Hang on. He's now got number 7 on his back. Man United are in the absolute pits, right? But Mason Mount's not been a part of it. So Mason's going to get a free pass when he comes back.
So I want to stop you a second. I want to ask you a question about it. When you say he's not injured, who is it is this Mason Mount and his team pretending to be injured, or is it Man United Football Club and Ten Hag pretending he's injured? Who's doing it, in your opinion?
Who knows? But listen, I don't believe he's injured one bit, mate. The same as I don't believe Thomas Partey's injured. Well, I don't.
I love you, Lee. You're the best.
No, it's
You're
true.
the best.
People in the chat saying conspiracies, you're a melt, this and that, mate. You're the same people that are crying about Anthony Martial and like Scott McTominay and Maguire, and Luke Shaw and all these players that have been there for years, stinking the place out. They're blaming them rather than blaming everyone else. Because the manager was the one picking them. And like I said, I don't believe he's injured, mate. I just think they're taking him out of the limelight for a bit. I just genuinely believe that. And the amount of money, Terry, if you Google how much money is spent on PR in the UK every year, it's touching 4 billion quid.
So I understand that.
Look, most of that's done by our football clubs.
So I understand that. I would say this about the situation. There's things you've said there about Ten Hag and the mistakes he's made, I agree with. This is the problem I have with Man United fans at large. So many of them are so basically. I'm not going to lie to you. The lack of critical thinking almost gives me a stroke when I deep it, because they just think sack manager, we're better. And it's not as easy as that, because Man United Football Club right now should be protecting the position of manager. Not maybe the manager, but the position of which he holds. Just because he's doing a bad job. And there's a comment that came in here that says, Terry, you're wrong. Players have free will. Clubs don't own them. Now, nobody states that the clubs own them. Now, what you're doing is becoming exceedingly pedantic about ownership. But they have a professional contract. So the element of their professionalism and their job, they have control over. Now, for me, if Lee works for me and KJ is his day-to-day line manager, but KJ is doing a really bad job, and because KJ is doing a bad job, no gross misconduct, just a bad job. If Lee goes, well, I'm not going to work as hard now, and I'm going to down tools, and I'm not going to deliver for Terry what my contract states I have to, just because KJ isn't, and I'm annoyed with him, they're both in trouble. Not, poor Lee, yeah, you're right, because KJ, who's your superior, is doing a bad job. It gives you the excuse to do a bad job. It gives you the excuse to speak about private company business outside of, in the public domain. All these things would get both of you sacked. And for me, that's the problem at Man United. We always try and reduce our problems down to one thing. Manager lost dressing room, sack him, we better. One player bad, sell him, we better. This is just absolute nonsense. As you said, the manager is overspent on players, and I agree.
The manager hasn't overspent on players. The club has overspent on players. The manager didn't pay the money. The manager didn't decide the fee or the earnings of the players.
No, I get that. Let me finish my point on that. So the manager and his team and the board collectively have all made that mistake, because I believe the manager is part of that problem. I believe the board are part of that problem. But what you said earlier is the point. Our players, our recruitment team, our board, and our manager are all on completely different wavelengths, completely different pages. So what gets to me about these conversations is people sit there and just go, they pick one of the problems, they fix that, we're better. It does my brain in, because I look at it and I'm seeing people now defend the players because they don't like the manager. Wrong. I'm seeing some people defend the manager because they think, well, the players shouldn't do this, so let's back the manager. Well, how are you backing a manager that's not even trying to implement his style of football, that's making all these mistakes? It's a combination of everything that has ruined us over the last 10 years. It's not a simple fix.
It's true, but at the same time, when you've got a manager, and I've said this to you on here before, when you've got a manager that gets pammed 7-0 and starts the same players in the very next game, why would any single one of them players, not take the mick? Because there's no accountability. The manager has sat in every single press conference pretty much and lauded up Harry Maguire, and I'm happy with my team, I'm happy with the squad. He's picking the same players after embarrassment after embarrassment after embarrassment. He then goes and signs players Yeah, and the 5 signings, you wanted an emergency left back. Why is he on the bench then? And you're playing Delo at left back at Newcastle. Why was the Amrabat on the bench and you're playing Kobe Mino or Scott McTominay?
So I agree with that though. But this is my view on these things. I understand what you're saying, and they're mistakes the manager has made, and he should be criticised for. But none of that is an excuse for someone to down tools, not work hard.
Yeah, no. But again, when there's no accountability, you can down tools because nobody's going to pull you up on it. So I'll give you a perfect example. No, let me give you this quick example, right? Go on. I don't know who it was. Yeah, it was either Neville or Carragher at the weekend. Yeah, I may be wrong. It might not even been either, but it was on Sky. And the Newcastle goalkeeper had the ball, and Martial's gone to trigger the press. Right? Rashford standing on the right wing, barely moved. Martial runs all the way back to the halfway line with the guy. But Carragher or Neville, whoever one it was criticising Martial and then just dropped Rashford's name at the end. Why? Martial's done his job. He's triggered the press. Now it's Rashford to trigger his part. And then the midfield do their bit. But no, Martial's looking around thinking, right, well, I better track him here. And they're calling out Martial for that. Rashford walks away with a free pass again.
What's that got to do with Man United and
because the players that are being held accountable are not the ones that should be being held accountable. Marcus Rashford should have been dug out in that. Why was it Martial being dug out in that? Martial's been poor and should be held accountable for a decade of failure. Right? Same as Luke Shaw. But in that particular instance, why was Martial the one dug out when he was the one that's actually running around doing his job?
Again, the media. I called the media out for myself on this the other day, so I agree with that point. But it doesn't negate what I'm saying here. For me, I understand the manager's made mistakes. I understand from your point of view, you think not dropping any of the players that lost 7-0 creates this feeling of, we don't need to be held accountable, so players can down tools, players can do what they want. Just because there's a reason to do something doesn't make it acceptable. And for me, this is where the conversations from fans, and I don't mean the children that are fans, I mean actual grown-ups that are fans like you and I, has to look at a level and you think to yourself, there is no reason for the players to do what they're doing. Be professional, work hard. Just because you don't like the manager. I saw Ali McQuest the other day say he can't understand this notion of losing dressing rooms. And he said, because I didn't like all my managers, but I weren't playing for them. He goes, I wasn't even often playing for the club. I was playing for myself and my family and pride. And I'm like, this is the problem, I think, in 2023. Some people think sticking 2 fingers up at authority is a sign of pride, even if that action is detrimental to you. And the way I look at it is this. Imagine you don't like your boss, but you purposely underperform, stop yourself getting promoted, stop yourself getting bonuses to say, I screwed the manager over. How is that helping you? It is an absolute nonsense loser mentality to have. This club is full of losers.
I totally agree with what you're saying, but when you're getting paid 400 grand, 300 grand, 200 grand, and you've been getting these salaries for years after years after years, new contract after failure, do you think you care about getting a goal bonus?
So this is what I'm saying to you. I agree that they don't care, but this is where it comes down to the people that run our club day in, day out, ensuring that it doesn't matter even if Ten Hag right now is making them scrub the toilets with their toothbrushes, they have still got to come in and do something about the way these players think they can behave. And that's why I say to people,
the hierarchy should be then calling Ten Hag into meetings. I'm sure they're having conversations on a daily basis, saying, what's going on here? Because that's another embarrassment. What's going on? And then Ten Hag's obviously giving his dialect back, context to the situation and blah, blah, blah. But then if Ten Hag's not being held accountable by your hierarchy and the players are not being held accountable by Ten Hag, all of a sudden...
Lee, this is my whole point for 17 years, especially in the last 7, 8, 9 on social media. I get sacking managers. I understand getting rid of players. But until our board change how they operate, which theoretically could happen with the new people coming in, because it is new people, and we'll hold them to account as well, nothing will ever get better. So to my original... we don't know yet. And this is what I'm saying. I can't. Yes. So of course I'm hoping they change my club.
But you're hoping it's not set in stone. Whereas if let me just give you a scenario.
Please let me finish my point, please, because it's important. So of course I'm hoping they come in and do it. It isn't set in stone because they're not here yet. My point is this. Go back to what I originally said, and I think we're in agreement on this. Just sitting there and saying sack the manager or sell these players, it's so basic. It's a ready salted packet of crisps. It isn't what's going to fix our club. It's a symptom of the problem at Manchester United. And as much as those things need to be discussed, people thinking that once you fix that one little problem, it's like taking a headache tablet for a brain tumor. It isn't going to make you better in the long term. It just isn't.